Hello, everybody, and welcome to Week 7 of Topics in Digital Law Practice. My name is John Mayer, and I am the Executive Director of Cali. There's a scary picture of me from this morning, just so that you have a picture to go with this disembodied voice. I want to remind everybody that there is no CLE credit offered for this course. I understand in some states you can self-report. That's wonderful, and I know a couple of you are doing that. But we haven't gone out and made any arrangement for that ourselves. A reminder that the goals of this course are to give students access to up-to-date information about law practice in the 21st century. And in addition, we've got law librarians and law faculty attending, and even some lawyers. But we want to inform law faculty about the changing nature of law practice so that it can inform their teaching. And we want to create an enduring resource, that is the recordings of these sessions and the materials that you create in some cases and that we create in some cases, an enduring resource that we can build on for future versions of this course. And that's why this is a MOOC, a massive online open course. So a reminder about the class websites at TDLP, Topics in Digital Law Practice, classcaster.net. That's the blog. If you have questions or problems, you can drop comments there. There's the wikispaces.com website, which is where the homeworks are put. We have a hashtag for Twitter if you're tweeting at hashtag TDLP. And generally speaking, if you want to know more about updates about this in a more immediate sense, you should follow Cali.org or myself, John P. Mayer, on Twitter. The homework badges these are the ones that were that so far we've awarded. Seeing a drop-off in people doing the homeworks, part of my job as the lead instructor is to motivate you. So take this as motivation. Do your homeworks. You will get benefit out of them, especially this week. And we'll talk about that more a little bit later. This is the reveal for the badge for this week. This is your TDLP Homework 7 badge that you are going to try to earn once we give out the homework. Wanted to go back there and point out that there's the badge with all of the states. That's from the fact that 20 or so of you pooled your efforts and created an awesome single web page that has links to all the primary law in all 50 states in the United States. That was a great job. Thanks so much. Don't forget, if you have questions, you can pop them into the little box, the question box. We move them into a Google Doc, and then at the end, we'll be asking the speaker those questions. This week, our session has the unfortunate name, Online Forms for Legal Aid. No, that's not unfortunate. It's maybe not the best title, and Ron will explain that when he gets started. Ron Staudt is our speaker, and perhaps you noticed that we've got 9 speakers in this Topics in Digital Law Practice, and Ron is the only law professor in that. And yet, as the only law professor, I consider him to be maybe the smartest guy in the U.S. on some of these issues. I have to full disclosure. He hired me originally at Chicago Kent back in 1987 when I was the director of the computer lab. Despite that, I still asked him to come onto this this course and speak and talk. I wanted to point out that the thing that he'll be talking about, where he brings specific expertise, is that he's the director of the Center for Access to Justice and Technology. He and I have worked together to design a piece of software called A to J Author that's part of a course that he teaches, a practicum. And I'm not going to get into what his talk, but he's doing what I consider to be some of the most interesting and advanced stuff in digital law practice that anybody's doing anywhere. And I'm really delighted to have him speak. And I think I'm ready to hand over the reins to Ron. So let me find the right button and change presenters. Ron, you should have a button saying accept being the presenter.
A button, show my screen. Okay, got it.
I can see your screen.
Very good. I wonder if you say those kind of really, flowery, wonderful introductions to everybody, or just me?
Actually, everybody, but it's because I picked people that I truly believe that about.
Well, let me talk a little bit, and I can't be happier to be here. John is just a giant in this field, and this innovation topics in digital law practice is just a spectacular success from day one. And it was such a success that I begged him to put me off a little later in the course so I got a little better sense of how it was going to go and how to approach this. So he was kind enough to do that. And he's right in some way. The first question is sort of how this topic about online legal forms in legal aid fits in with the other parts of the course. And then the more I thought about that, the more I thought that we just didn't do a good job of naming this session. So, I mean, what we've heard already is some insightful information from Stephanie about virtual law practice and e-lawyering. We've heard Mark Lauritsen, who is the world's expert on document assembly, lay out how those tools have developed in the last 35 years to become truly powerful assistants to delivering services to clients. Richard Granite talked about the latent legal market and various ways to approach using technology and digital tools, much in the same way that Stephanie is doing it, although Richard is the pioneer there, in delivering unbundled services, so pieces of things that clients need can be delivered to them just in time and only in the quantity and amount that they need so that they can keep costs down and make better access opportunities for justice. Of course, Jim talked about technology in the courts and look, talk about great names. So Sarah comes out and her thing is free stuff. I mean, I can't compete with free stuff. Next coming up, we're going to get something from Unauthorized Practice, which is a frightening title, but one that draws your attention, from Will, and then Ernie the Attorney. I mean, just that's going to bring people into social media. So I started to think about, what does this have to do with what I'm going to talk about? And basically, my thinking is that what we've done is, in the course so far, is identify a series of opportunities. We've talked about some tools that might be used by lawyers to begin to practice in a digital law practice. But when you get done with this course, you may have some idea about what those tools are, some of the dangers and the opportunities that using them would trigger, but you don't really know how to use them. You're not really ready to do it. And in many ways, what this class today is about is a plan, a project that John and I and others are a part of to try to build into legal education courses, hybrid clinical courses that provide deep instruction in how to use the tools of digital law practice. Turns out that a way to do that might also produce additional information and content and objects that will help low-income people get access to justice. And so I started to think, well, here's some better titles. How about Law School's Legal Aid and Digital Law Practice? Or maybe just name it after my course, which would be Justice and Technology Clinic, a new model for legal services and education delivery. Or more clever, Apps for Justice. And then ultimately I came to the conclusion that basically here's what it is. It's how law students can learn to use the tools of digital law practice, in law school, by the way, and simultaneously increase access to justice for low-income people. So I'm happy with that, and I wish I thought of that like 3 months ago when we were putting this course together, and I could have put that title out there and drawn you into this class today. But let's see if we can learn something about this as we go forward. So there's a couple of different things that I want to work through with you to try to lay this out. So first, I want to sort of set the stage. I mean, why is this a process? Why is this course, this combination of law students and technology, poised to really make a difference both to education and to access to justice? So we'll talk there about the massive unmet legal need that's getting more massive, and a surprising set of technology successes funded by the Legal Services Corporation that put essentially a digital infrastructure or platform for practice in place across the country. Next, we'll ask John to do a demonstration of A to J Author and show you an A to J guided interview or two. This is our collaboration to build a tool that lets non-technical lawyers and court clerks and their associates build instructional products that also gather information and can pass that information off to a document assembly program to deliver a final document to a self-represented litigant or to an advocate for use in filing in court. So we'll talk more about that, and John will demonstrate it to you. And then the last part of the 45 minutes or so is a description of this Access to Justice course, Justice and Technology Practicum, and a little bit of I guess, of a pitch as to why it's a good thing for law schools to have this kind of course, or at least offer it to as many students as might be interested. All right, set the stage. Massive unmet legal need. Maybe this is not necessary, and the data I'm about to show you is data that has been gathered before the recent, not so recent anymore, 2008 and on, economic downturn. But the Legal Services Corporation, which is the largest single funder of free legal services in the civil world for low-income people, the Legal Services Corporation has a group of funded agencies throughout the states, maybe I think 117, 120. It distributes money to those delegate agencies, those legal aid organizations, in a proportion to the number of poor people in each state, distributes somewhere between $300 and $450 million a year, depending on how generous Congress is. And with that money, traditionally over the past 8-10 years or so, I think this is a consistent figure, those lawyers, maybe 5,000-6,000 of them, do 1 million cases a year. Yet, 50% of the people that come to those organizations seeking legal help are turned away, and 80% of the legal needs of the poor and working poor in the United States go unmet. To give you a little local look at that, that's 383,000 low-income households in Illinois. This is a legal needs study that was done about 5 years ago. Those households face 1.3 million legal problems each year, and the last 5 years has made that number go up. We just don't have a measurement for it today. And the analysis in Illinois is that 83% of these legal needs go unmet, or roughly 1,100,000 legal issues just in Illinois go unmet every year. There's another sort of parallel phenomenon that envelops both low-income people and moderate and even some high-income people, and that's the steady rise in self-representation in U.S. courts. This has been going on for 25 years, and here are a couple of little tidbits about increases in self-representation happening throughout the country in divorce cases. Some states, California, Arizona, Florida, as I recall, show 85% of all divorces have one or both parties self-represented. As this economic crisis unfolded, we did some studies in Chicago, and the number of creditor cases, which are always, with rare exception, self-represented on the defendant's side, tripled, so that in the Chicago courts involving consumer credit, the theory was you could say pro se cases have tripled. In addition to low-income people, of course, these justice customers, these self-represented litigants in U.S. courts, are part of that latent market for legal services that Stephanie Kimbrough and Richard Granite discussed in earlier classes. We've studied them in large, massive studies of self-represented litigants, and there are even well-to-do people in the self-represented group who just feel that they don't need to take on the burden of cost and imposition in their lives that a lawyer represents, and they can handle this themselves. It's sort of a Home Depot justice mentality. All right, so with that in place, sobering, getting worse, legal need scenario, there are some positive things out there. Over the last 10 years, with a very small portion of its annual appropriation, the Legal Services Corporation began to try to stimulate its grantees, its legal aid organizations across the country, to use technology to do a better job of serving low-income people's legal needs. This was called the Technology Innovation Grant Program, and it was usually $3 or $4 million a year out of $300 or $400 million in terms of appropriations. And those grants over the past 10 years have produced just surprising successes. And here's the bullet list. I'll go through and show you some of these as we continue in the PowerPoint, but just to quickly list them. Essentially, because of the TIG grants, every state now has a single, authentic legal aid website aimed at the public. So the legal aid organizations in every state funded by LSC have come together, identified a single website where they will use to deliver their public information resources to educate the public, and as we'll see later on, as a platform for the delivery of actual services. All legal aid providers funded by LSC have access to a national server called Law Help Interactive. This national server allows all of these states to put document assembly templates in a single server and allows the customers of those states to get access to those templates from any place in the world where they have access to the internet. Starter grants have built up small but productive developer groups dispersed across the country. So there are probably 25 or 30 legal aid employees or contractors throughout the country who are building templates to help deliver legal services using document assembly. And they talk to each other on a listserv and are interacting with each other constantly. And they have produced some significant body of content for delivery of legal aid using automated document assembly. Through that same period, with a partnership between Chicago Kent and Cali, an extraordinary piece of software has been built called A to J Author that delivers just-in-time instruction in a very soft, easy-to-use interface, almost graphical, almost like a comic book. And simultaneously, it allows legal aid organizations in interaction on the web with their clients and customers to gather client information that can be put into a template and deliver back to them a completed document for use in court. And the results of this infrastructure have been just astounding. All right, so let's go over and look at some of these things. All right, every state has its own authentic legal aid website, and you can find all of them from lawhelp.org. Lawhelp.org is also a host for many of them. Maybe 2/3 of them are Law Help sites. But this lawhelp.org front page provides a link to every state's authentic legal aid website. I keep stressing that authentic bit because there are scavengers and less than scrupulous people out there who try to feed on this market on the edges and sometimes are not accurate and they're not ethical. And it's important to have a single place where low-income people can go with confidence that what they're getting is information that's authentic and driven by the legal aid lawyers who are funded to provide services to them. And this is the starting place for every place in the country. Here is the opening page for the Illinois Legal Aid website. And you can see it's pretty friendly, and you type in your legal problem into the little box on the left. I'm going to try my John Madden felt tip pen. So you type your legal problem into this box. You can, I'm not going to type in there, but you could say divorce. And you put your zip code in here, 60072, and you click search, and then off the program goes, and ultimately it'll come back with something like this: getting a divorce in Illinois. And this is a guide me kind of gathering up of all kinds of resources that might help someone seeking information about getting a divorce in Illinois. So it answers general questions. It provides instructions, related articles. It provides links to lawyer referral services sponsored by the Cook County Bar Association and others. And it provides document assembly and forms and A to J guided interviews to help you work through problems on your own if that's what you need to do. How is that world of document assembly delivered to everybody throughout the country? Well, LSC essentially funded a single server to host document assembly templates and, as we'll see in a moment, A to J guided interviews. It's a national infrastructure for online document automation. It's incredibly efficient and farsighted of this federal agency to do this. All the participation by the grantees is driven by the fact that grants to them in this technology innovation space require them to use the national infrastructure and stay in the software selected umbrella of that's supported nationally. But all of that produces essentially the kind of efficiency that one single law firm might produce, and instead of 117 legal aid organizations as it relates to document assembly. There essentially is one infrastructure, one listserv, one software cluster, and a support group that supports the entire process. And it's been adopted widely. This is last month's graphic from Law Help Interactive, which is based in New York, indicating the states that have live document assembly templates up, the states that have some in development. And you can see that almost everybody, there's 3 or 4 states that have nothing, and almost everybody is in this game. A to J author. Well, this is something I'm so proud of I can't stand it. It's a graphical user interface designed by Chicago Kent and by Cali for low-income, self-represented individuals. And on the right there you see, this is just a screen dump of A to J author. And you get the sense of that sort of graphical, game-like interface. Essentially, this is an avatar that is a guide, and the guide essentially helps you work your way through a series of questions and provides information. And as you complete each step, you move to a new signpost, and at the end of the signpost is the courthouse where the system produces documents that deliver directly to your computer. Let me show you a little bit more about how that works. On the left top corner here is the screen grab of what it looks like to make one of these guided interviews. The point of that, and John will stress this when he does the demonstration, is that we built the A to J author authoring part so that anybody on this class could figure out how to do it. You need to be about as sophisticated as one who can do maybe Word and a little bit of Excel to learn and begin to use this product. This is the screen that the customer sees. I talked to you about the avatar guide. This is the avatar that represents the customer. So if you said your name and said you were a male, after that first screen, this happens, and you'll see that in a minute. The other importance of this screen is what we're showing is the difference between how A to J appears to authors. This is authors, and this is users, and users, and how more sophisticated professional tools used by lawyers like Hot Docs look. So this is a Hot Docs authoring screen, and this is a Hot Docs interview. And the point of A to J Author, in addition to instructing our customers and users, is to provide a softer, more pleasant, and easier to use interface than those provided by the commercial environments. All right, so what does this do? Well, you do this interview, and from the interview you can deliver data to the national server, and out comes a protective order or another document. It sort of looks like this. You sign on to the website, you go to Legal Aid Online. From Legal Aid Online, your request for an interview is sent to Law Help Interactive, and then that comes to you. You fill out the information on the interview using A to J Author and send it back to Law Help Interactive, and then at the end of that process, your document comes out. Has this been successful? I mean, it's amazingly successful. These are the numbers that Law Help Interactive gave on a conference call last week. For 2011, we're looking at almost 600,000 interviews, 320,000 assemblies and emails and so on. Since 2005, when this started, 942,000 documents have been assembled. So we can look at this, you can tell what's happening is there's this massive hockey stick happening, right? Because in this space right now, you've got 318,000 of 900,000, and this whole space is 600,000. So a third of the use of this tool has happened in the last year. Sort of looks like this. This is the A to J Author activity. A to J Author sits in front of most of those interviews, most of those documents, and there are 800 now A to J guided interviews, and 900,000 or so documents have been prepared in 32 different states and so on. Success has been amazing. So let's stop here for a second and see if John will do a demo for us. What we have is an opportunity to take a look at how this actually works. John, are you there?
John is here, and I'm taking the screen back from you. And show my screen. You can see my screen now, Ron?
Yeah.
I'm showing. Great. So I'm jumping right into the middle of an actual A to J guided interview. This is I've almost forgotten. What is this? This is the Idaho small claims, I think, action. Mm-hmm. And rather than starting at the beginning, I wanted to jump in the middle because I wanted to demonstrate some features that were like 8 or 10 questions in. The first one is this. I'm going to just back up and then hit next. And I hope you were able to hear that. But here, I can just hit play again. And when I hit learn more,
can't hear it.
I can't make it much louder, can I? Let's try that again.
What is a plaintiff? A plaintiff is a person who starts a lawsuit.
So the point being that one of the features of A to J is the ability to add audio that plays either automatically or at the request of the user. It's just a user interface capability for people that are more comfortable hearing something read to them than necessarily reading it on the screen. A lot of thought, an enormous amount of thought went into this design, and as is typical, it's hard to do easy. And the easy here is that in 2003, 2004, when we were designing this, one of the problems with the web was its complexity and people's unfamiliarity with doing important tasks on it. And so you've all used web forms, JavaScript or HTML forms, where you fill in lots of fields to buy something or to put in your address or perhaps to do your taxes or something like that. Well, what this does, what A to J Author does, is it actually slows down the process, or at least it feels like it slows it down, and it only asks 1 or 2 questions at a time. And as the people ask questions, I'm going to say, is there another plaintiff? No.
The defendant in the small claims
and kill that. You basically progress forward with the courthouse being the representation of justice or access to your desired document, getting closer and closer. So this is like a progress bar going forward. And you notice there's not a lot going on the screen, or to a very large degree we try to eliminate things from the screen so that all you're focusing on is the current question, because this is complicated stuff for people that aren't lawyers. And you have a guide, as Ron described. You are represented by an avatar there, and there's little thought bubbles that can come out of your head. And this is actually fascinating. What these thought bubbles represent is the experience that very experienced legal aid attorneys have in dealing with hundreds or thousands of clients. They know the questions that people will ask, or they know the confusions that people have about a process. And so the tool lets them build those questions and confusions right into the interview. It may have nothing to do with getting the information. But it may be something that everybody, when they come to this, they don't know what this word means, or it's some sort of term of art. Well, they can put a little learn more there that will pop up with an explanation of what these terms mean, and then if you want to go even deeper, you could have links that go off the website, for those people that have the time or the inclination to learn even more. But to a large degree, we work with our authors, or we've designed this tool so that they can only fit a little bit of information on the screen. All of you have, matter of fact, last week your homework was to go look at some end-user license agreements, and if you were brave enough to go and grab like the Apple one, you'll know that it's 57 pages. Well, that's massively overwhelming if you have a legal problem and you have to consume some huge amount of information. And so the goal of this is enough information to answer the question, and also enough to adequately inform the user, because you don't want to oversimplify it either. People have to know what they're doing. So, you could have, you can build multiple choice questions, check boxes, radio buttons, all sorts of things, almost anything you can do in a JavaScript or an HTML form.
What is the defendant's full legal name?
I'll turn the sound off for these from now on. You'll see the things in red. If I don't fill that in, and hit continue, it's going to come back and say you got to put something in there. So it does require certain types of information, and when you get to the end, I'm going to quickly click through. Here's a little explanation. You have to give the defendant some service. And this is a good example because in this case, they included a video. Ron, tell me if people are seeing this.
Yeah, we're seeing it.
Service of process means to notify the defendant, the person or persons being sued, of your claim. The procedure for giving notice to the defendant is called service of process. If your claim is against more than one person, you must notify each person. If you are suing a married couple, each spouse must also be notified. You must follow specific steps.
That's great, John.
Yeah, I'm going to hit pause now. There we go. Oh, great. Great. So anybody could put videos like this up on YouTube, and that's totally cool. But the value of having a video drop in right at the moment that somebody has a question about it while they're filling out a form, well, I think that's even cooler. It's that just-in-time education or just-in-time guidance that makes it better than just having, you could have a form and you could have the manual separate, but by integrating the explanation or the clarifications right in with the questions makes the whole process go a lot smoother. At least that's the goal. All right, so I'm going to flip over to A to J author as an author and show you some of the underlying guts real quick. So here I'm in A to J author, and if I click edit this, Now I'm actually editing this question. So just to prove that, I'll just type some crap and hit preview, and then you can see that. Yeah, we'll hit stop on that. So what's going on here is interesting. We had the difficult problem of wanting relatively non-technical lawyers to be able to create essentially flowcharts that will ask questions and that may branch on relatively sophisticated criteria. So I'm going to go to this question, and I'm going to blow that up a little bit. Yeah, there we go. And you can see that what's going on with this question is it's going to a branch, and depending on what the user clicks as an answer, it will go either to one question or to another question or flip back. I think if I go and if I edit that, yes, and I go to the button and hit advanced, here are the conditionals that determine where the question goes based on the user's input. Now, we struggled with, well, should we let people do this as a programming language, have them type? But we felt that was a little too much technology to require of people. And so we built it as a sort of, a generic interlocking block concept where you basically can build your if-then statements, one at a time, and then decide where they'll go. So if the person chooses 3 million, it will go to question 1, which says, unfortunately, and I'll let you in. It says, unfortunately, we're not that far. If they choose 406,000, it says correct. And then if they choose anything else, then it falls out the bottom and says, nope, try again. So let me show you how that actually plays out in the preview. We'll turn the sound off. So if I choose 100 and hit continue, it's going to give me the nope, try again, and then I can circle back. If I choose 3 million, it hits that if statement. We're not there yet, try again. And then if I choose the correct answer, 406,000, this is a sample, obviously, interview, and hit continue, it's like, correct. End users have assembled over 400,000 documents. All right? So this is where the authors spend a lot of their time, and we found that they can do this. As a matter of fact, we may have made it too simple, and they're beating their heads against this, trying to do ever more complicated processes using A to J author. Now, if you're really into the wonkiness of this, let me pop up the XML. And basically, the entire interview is stored as an XML file. And the reason why we did that was we anticipate that we will be building different interfaces that run on different devices in the future. As a matter of fact, we're working on that right now. And so once we do that, we won't have to recode everybody's, the 10,000 interviews that have already been written that are out there, because all we have to do is write a piece of software that can read the interview XML. And so we made our path forward a lot easier. All right. What else did I want to show you about this? Well, I think that's pretty much it. I'm going to hand it back to Ron and let him continue where he left off.
Okay.
Ron, the screen is yours.
Thank you, sir. All right. John, that was very helpful. Thank you. So, we did the demo, and now we want to talk a little bit about a way forward to provide a mechanism that will deliver education and digital law practice tools to our current and future students, and also have the great side effect of increasing access to justice. So when I talked to you about the surprising successes, I talked a little bit about starter grants that have been delivered by the Legal Services Corporation, like for $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000. to fund part-time developers in various states to build these guided interviews that John showed you. And there are a dedicated group of these trained folks out there now. But the key word in the bullet is small. There aren't that many of them. And we believe that despite the hockey stick demand and utilization curve that we showed you on these previous slides, that we're really only at the very beginning of the use of these tools. We have 800 or so of these guided interviews up. They're concentrated in about a half a dozen states where most of the throughput is coming. So we think that instead of 300, 400,000 a year, that we should be looking at something like 1 million a month and maybe going to 1 million a week ultimately of use of this kind of tool by low-income people. And we think that a significant gate, now that there is an infrastructure in place, is talented people to actually build these document assembly units. So how do we fix that? Well, one thought is let's develop a clinical education movement, a new addition or an extension of our clinical education infrastructure in law schools, to deliver a powerful educational punch to teach our students how to do digital law practice and simultaneously increase access to justice. And it turns out there are half a dozen such examples. BYU has been doing this kind of thing for 20 years. Columbia, Brian Donnelly and Conrad Johnson have been doing a course called Lawyering in the Digital Age for 12 years or 10 years. New York Law School, Vermont. I'll tell you about my course. Mark Lauritsen, who was one of our early teachers in this MOOC, is going to do a new course at Suffolk Law School in the fall called Lawyering in the Age of Smart Machines, I think loosely titled after the name of one of his books. So why is this a good idea? First of all, if you can't make a pedagogical pitch, if you can't ground this initiative in the educational needs of our students, then it's going to fail. Despite that problem, I am just wildly confident about the pedagogical value of these kinds of clinics. The first thing is that they provide, as most well-done supervisory experiential clinical courses, a deep dive into the law, sometimes narrow, not broad, but a narrow dive into law, also procedure and heuristics. And the heuristics is an important addition there, which is available almost nowhere else. And I'll explain to you how that comes up when I tell you the procedures and practices that we use in the course. In addition, it exposes students to policy and ethical issues raised by legal services delivery in this digital age. And Will Hornsby will help dig into that a little bit more when he teaches the course next week, I think it is. And Will also teaches a class in my course because he's the world's expert on these things. And there are continuing deep and important policy and ethical issues here. And finally, perhaps most relevant to this course, these kinds of clinical experiences can provide key competencies for emerging law practice, for digital lawyering, for e-lawyering, for unbundling, for understanding how and how effectively to use the Web 2.0 social media tools and practice in the cloud. All right, so here's a little description of the educational piece and the service justice piece that comes out of the course that I've been offering for the last several years. So Justice and Technology Practicum is a hybrid. It has a classroom component that meets every week for about an hour and a half at the most. It requires field work like a clinic of a certain amount. You have to put in a certain number of hours, 5 or 6 hours a week of clinical work that can be done in a number of different things. The end product of the course is a completed hot docs template and a completed A to J guided interview that can be used by a legal aid organization to help enrich the offerings on their authentic website for low-income people. All right, so what do law students do? Well, they start out with field observation at a help desk that we run in the Daly Center, which is the large trial court in Chicago. And this is an essential component, in my view. We require students in the first 3 weeks to do 20 hours of observation of self-represented people trying to work their way through the justice system, and part of that time can be spent at our help desk, where we provide information and access to some of the tools like A to J guided interviews for those self-represented people to use themselves to prepare their documents and so on. Once that field observation and that experience with the customer and seeing things in the customer's eyes is underway, students pick a topic or a project, usually in conjunction here with a legal aid organization, frequently Illinois Legal Aid Online, although we've done work with Montana Native American Legal Aid. We've done work with Pennsylvania Legal Aid, Ohio Legal Aid, and Minnesota Legal Aid. Like any other development project, they write a scope document. They say, this is what I am trying to do. These are the customers, the self-represented people I'm trying to help. This is the problem that they face, and this is how the work I do will solve that problem for them if they're appropriately qualified for the solution. Then they write a deep, thorough research memo. The purpose of the research memo is to serve as an audit trail for every legal decision that is implied by or explicitly facing the user as they walk through an interview. The next project, the next step in the process is to write a storyboard, which is essentially a pen and paper mock-up of what the software will do when the software is written, so that the language that can be developed for the interview with self-represented people can be pitched at the right level. We shoot for a plain language level of 5th grade as we write these things, and work very hard on that fine line between accuracy and comprehensibility that technical documents and technical work in law require for us to deal with. And then in the last third or so, half to third of the course, the students write a hot docs template and an A to J guided interview. From this process comes, in the 2 times that I've offered the course, and actually I offered it in the fall as sort of as an introductory course, and then almost every student usually signs up for a Practicum 2 course, which is mostly working on the guided interviews, hot docs templates, and improving their efficiency. So each of these courses has effectively lasted a year. The students have produced a whole series of guided interviews, guardianship petitions, expungement complaints, a wage theft claim for Illinois Department of Labor, and so on. And these guided interviews and this work product would not have otherwise been available to these legal aid organizations because of lack of time and effort. So, what are we doing to try to spread the word? Well, in addition to this fabulous MOOC that John has organized, the Legal Services Corporation has authorized a modest grant for the next 2 years to try to establish some momentum in legal education generally. Some funds have been provided to build course materials, and we'll use this class and many of the other classes of the MOOC as part of these course materials, I hope. And we'll make those available, including other kinds of distance tools that might allow remote resources like experts and hot docs to be available to faculty members who don't have that resource nearby, and use Google and other kinds of cloud tools to help us in that regard. There's some funds to support unusual costs for 3 clinical pilots that the Legal Services Corporation has set aside over the next 2 years, essentially to help hire technical support or to defray software costs or other kinds of unusual costs that such a clinic would trigger. We're going to build on the shared course material website a matching tool so that students and legal aid organizations can match up and projects can get to students and students can get to projects. And finally, we'll do some marketing and evaluation and a plan for the growth of this process. We think out of this comes a virtuous circle, that we'll build these courses and that students will develop skills and core competencies that they need to be effective as digital law practice people, that the guided interviews and templates will be developed to help low-income people build access to justice, and that will fund and create more enthusiasm for more such courses. Other people think this is a good idea. Mark Lauritsen and I pitched it to this conference in New York in April, and we got $2 million worth of funny money. Too bad it wasn't real, but it was a great honor to get this sort of suggestion that we were the top innovation for the future of legal education of the 20 or so that were surfaced at that conference. Here's a little proof that our name is really on this check. This is too bad it's not any good. But our hope is that this is a new model for the delivery of education and the tools of the digital law practice that is the center of this MOOC and the center of your study over the past few weeks.
Excellent. I'm going to take the screen back from you, Ron, so that I can pull up the questions.
Okay.
And then I'm going to pull up the questions. Where did I put the questions? There we are, questions. So if you have questions, now's the time to be posting them. We've got a few that I put up there, and we've got a little bit of time. So the first one that I put in there was there's lots of bad press right now about going to law school. You know, is this a time of great despair, or is this a time of great opportunity? I've been asking almost everybody a similar type question, and since I've got a law professor, I thought I'd ask you.
Actually, I don't know that this time is much different with respect to opportunity or despair than other times that we've faced in the last 30 or 40 years as a profession, both practicing lawyers and educators. I mean, the profession, as well as the national and international economy, is dealing with the effects of the 2008 and subsequent downturn. That in the space I work, which is providing access to justice tools, I mean, that's creating an enormous amount of new demand. That demand is, to me, an opportunity for people who want to help others using their legal skills to find a way to engage and solve some of the problems that people face when they come up against the justice system and all its complexity and difficulty. So I know that's sort of along the edge of your question, but I think that the problems facing low-income people create an opportunity for students to rise to the occasion to help them.
Excellent. Is there an LHI for criminal matters? And if not, why not?
All right. The LHI national server for these templates is funded in almost completely by Legal Services Corporation grants and contracts. And the Legal Services Corporation, by statute, is not permitted to handle criminal matters. So that infrastructure is all about supporting the delegate agencies or the grantees of the Legal Services Corporation, and those grantees cannot, because of the statutory funding structure, handle criminal matters.
But law school clinics often are dealing with criminal matters, true?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And so maybe there's an opportunity, I'm thinking out loud here, for a clinic or consortia helping clinics do sort of the LHI model on criminal matters or matters that law school clinics handle.
Yeah, I think the only policy question would be whether or not LHI would be permitted to host the result of that work. The fact that LHI couldn't do it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be done. It's not that difficult to establish, a criminal defense host that would allow this kind of sharing. And to some extent, criminal matters have a tendency to perhaps to be even more local than civil matters, and so maybe that would make sense to do locally anyway.
Yeah, more jurisdictional. But the tool set that would be shared amongst the different jurisdictions is still an economy of scale opportunity there, I would think.
Absolutely. Right. That
right.
tool set, that whole tool set, depending on how you're thinking about tool set, if you're thinking about the skills in the students who graduate from these courses, that skill set is completely transferable to Stephanie Kimbrough's e-lawyering practice, or Richard Granite's unbundled practice as well.
Cool. So here's a question. If I'm on the board of a legal aid organization, I assume you can see these, right, Ron? If I'm on the board of a legal aid organization that does not get LSC funds or regularly provide such a group with pro bono help, how can I tap into these services?
Well, the services are, in terms of the end user, are generally made available without restrictions. So if there is a divorce template on the Indiana Legal Aid website, almost anybody could go to that template and run it and produce the document. So in that way, there aren't any explicit qualification restrictions on the use of these things. Although they are, people are funneled to them from legal aid websites where low-income people are directed to get help. The tools, again, as I suggested to you, can be used for people who are lawyers for people who are not low income, who are not restricted to legal aid types of cases. It can be used for anything where there are repetitive types of services that are needed. So you can imagine foreclosure cases or house closings or all kinds of things could use these tools.
Excellent. All right, time for last question. Looks like I've got a clinical teacher. How can I get access to these materials? And even I know the answer to that. Contact you or I. Send our Staudt at kentlaw.edu or jmayer at keller.org an email. We're not yet ready we're working on the website that will have the materials and will go live. But we're creating mailing lists and people who express interest right now.
And I basically will give any clinical teacher who wants to contact me access to my course materials, my websites, my guides, all the stuff I use with my students, how we map out the student performances, all that stuff I'll make available to you. And our plan is to create that in a more sophisticated way, so that it's publicly available too. But I'll be happy to provide that directly to you.
Cool. All right. So we're getting close to wrapping up here. Let me go over the homework. Where did I put the homework button? There it is. So the homework for week 7. Oh, before I finish, Ron, thank you very much. That was marvelous. Really appreciate it.
Great fun, John. Thank you for organizing this.
So the homework, we want you to work through an A to J guided interview, and we've got a link there, petition to expunge or seal your criminal record. I've warned the folks at Illinois Legal Aid that if they see an unusual spike in the number of people wanting to seal their criminal records in Chicago, that it was you folks, my class, our class here. I've also got the link in case the link, so that you can just copy it into your browser if you want. There's also a list of A to J forms if you wanted to explore some different forms at the Illinois Legal Aid website, and I've got a link there. What I want you to do is pay special attention to the interface and the differences from the interactive form that you looked at when you did the hot docs or the other forms back in week 2. And I've given you the links to that for you to remember. or for that matter, pay attention to the difference in the interface compared to any web form, any reasonably complicated web form that you're familiar with, because we're going to do homework here that does double duty. One, it gives you some experience in a tool that is representative of the type of tools that lawyers will be using in their digital practice. And we're in the process, we as in Cali are in the process of rewriting A to J Author so that it becomes a web-based authoring system. I need to do a shout out to Sam Goshorn, who is the programmer of this. He's done an amazing job coding this. I just take credit for all of his marvelous work. He's a Cali employee. But we love more feedback. So we're working on a new version of A to J Author. It's not going to require Flash like this one does. And it will also run on smartphones, because increasingly people are using smartphones as their primary method of getting access to the web. And so after taking a look at a couple of A to J guided interviews, I want you to, one, write an analysis describing your impressions of how well the interface works or doesn't. You know, give us a review, an honest review, and how well it will work if it gets scaled up. You know, imagine it not just doing simple things, relatively simple things like an expungement, but imagine doing much more complicated long-term legal processes. You know, how would that interface handle that sort of scale up? And then two, do some brainstorming on how this might work or not work if it were scaled down to the size of a smartphone. You know, are there any killer features that we got to have if we're on a smartphone, or are there any features that if we don't have, you know, it becomes unusable? Put your answers into the homework wiki. We want your brains to be thinking, and we want your feedback. It would be very valuable to us. It is 2:03, so we've been going for a little bit over an hour, and we're done. Thanks so much. Keep doing your homework, kids. We do read them. And see you next week when Will Hornsby will be talking about unauthorized practice of law in the digital age.
The organizer has ended the session.